Stop everything. What you're about to hear is going to leave you speechless at your next dinner table. Because for a full hour, I'm going to prove that almost everything you swore was true is actually a lie. I'm the monkey, and I spend my life digging through the trash of fake facts to bring you the good stuff. Science, history, bugs, cars, movies, your own body, food, words you use every single day. Nothing is safe, and it's not your fault, okay? We were all taught the same way, with the same confident face in school, on TV, and at the family barbecue. Today we're knocking them down one by one, fast and with facts that don't fail. Subscribe and don't go anywhere, because this is 1 hour without a breath. You assume that every animal can throw up when something disagrees with it, just like we do when we eat something bad. False for several. And the most famous case is the horse. A horse simply cannot vomit. The connection between its stomach and its esophagus has a muscular valve so strong and so strictly one way that even if the animal wanted to, with all its heart, it can't bring the food back up. That's why a digestive problem in a horse, what's called colic, can turn deadly serious fast, because it doesn't have the escape route the rest of us animals have. Whatever goes in, for a horse, can only keep going forward. It's literally a one-way pipe. So horses need to be watched closely with what they eat since they don't have an emergency button. The most elegant animal on the farm lacks the grossest maneuver the rest of us have. You look at the giant moon in the sky, and you look at Australia on a map, and it would never cross your mind to compare them. And yet, Australia, from edge to edge, east to west, measures around 2,500 miles. The moon in diameter measures about 2,160 miles. So if you could set the moon down next to Australia, the country would stick out on both sides. Our satellite, the one that rules the night and looks enormous, is narrower than a single country here on Earth. What happens is that the moon is close and floats alone in the sky, so our brain gives it a size that it doesn't actually have compared to things down here. The moon fits inside Australia with room to spare, smaller than it looks. You're terrified of the word radioactive. You connect it with power plants and danger, and you'd never think your breakfast banana has a bit of that in it. And yes, it does, but relax. The banana is slightly radioactive because it's loaded with potassium, and a tiny part of that potassium is a naturally radioactive version called potassium-40. It's such a small amount that scientists even invented a joke unit, the banana equivalent dose, to explain to people that radiation is everywhere in ridiculous amounts. You'd have to eat millions of bananas for it to do anything to you, which is to say never. Your own body has radioactive potassium too. You're glowing a little without even knowing it. The calmest fruit in the drawer is a miniature nuclear reactor, extremely dangerous if you eat a truckload per second. You have a gorgeous orange cat, and you never thought its color had anything to do with its sex. Fine detail. The vast majority of orange cats are male, around 8 out of every 10. The reason is hidden in the genes. Orange color is carried on the X chromosome, and since males only have one, a single dose of the gene is enough to make them fully orange. Females who have 2 need the instruction in duplicate, which is much less common. And that's why they're rarer. It's like a lock that opens with 1 key in a male and needs 2 matching keys in a female. If you see a ginger cat, there's a good chance it's a gentleman. The orange coat is basically a boys' club. You think of sharks as terrifying creatures, but deep down, just another animal among many. Get ready for a bit of time travel dizziness. Sharks are older than trees. The first sharks were already swimming through the seas about 450 million years ago, back when dry land didn't have a single real tree yet. Just low plants and mosses. Trees as we know them showed up much later. And as if that weren't enough, sharks are also older than the rings of Saturn, which according to many studies are relatively young on a cosmic scale. So this creature watched the forests appear and maybe even the formation of the most famous planet's rings. The shark is a living fossil that survived everything. It was swimming around before tree trunks existed. Just think about that. You look at a mirror and you'd swear its color is silver, neutral, without any tint at all. False, and it hides a color. The mirror is slightly green. Mirrors reflect a bit better in the green part of the spectrum than in the rest of the colors. That tint is almost impossible to notice in a single reflection, but it gives itself away when you set two mirrors facing each other and look at the infinite tunnel that forms. Look closely, and you'll see that hallway of reflections, repeating into the distance, getting greener and greener every time the light bounces again and again. Each bounce adds a little more green until it becomes obvious. The mirror has a favorite color, and it hides it well. It's shy green, not innocent silver. You've called it a killer whale your whole life. You've seen it in documentaries as the terror of the seas with the word whale in its name. Lie. The orca is not a whale, it's a dolphin. The largest dolphin that exists, to be exact. Part of the family of those friendly creatures that jump around in photos. It shares with them the huge brain, coordinated group hunting, and even dialects between families. An orca can measure close to 30 feet and weigh more than 6 tons, and it's still a dolphin on steroids. The nickname killer comes from an old expression in ancient Spanish, which called it whale killer because it used to hunt them. So yes, it hunts whales, but it isn't one itself, the world's largest dolphin dressed up as a whale, and we believed it. When something gives you panic, you use that word without thinking about where it comes from. Brace yourself, panic comes straight from a Greek god, Pan, that being who was half man and half goat and lived in the forests. According to the ancients, Pan could cause sudden, irrational terror in people wandering alone through the wilderness. A fear with no clear cause that would grab you out of nowhere and make you run. That collective, senseless fright was named panic in his honor. So every time you feel that wave of unexplainable dread, you're naming a goat god from thousands of years ago. The modern panic attack has a mythological sponsor. You didn't get scared, Pan paid you a visit. You cut into a juicy steak. You see that red liquid it releases, and you automatically think you're eating blood. Pure, unjustified disgust. That red juice in your steak is not blood. When the animal is processed, almost all the blood is drained out, so there's practically none left in the cut you buy. That reddish liquid is actually water mixed with a protein called myoglobin, which is what gives meat its red color and is in charge of storing oxygen in the animal's muscles. The more myoglobin a muscle has, the redder it looks. That's why beef is red and chicken breast is paler, not because of blood, but because of how much of that protein is present. The juice in your steak is water with muscle pigment, not blood dripping out. You're eating tinted protein. No vampire is lying to you on your plate. You picture a scorpion as a dark, dull creature hiding in the shadows. Total surprise. Scorpions glow. If you point an ultraviolet flashlight at them in the dark, they light up in an incredible phosphorescent green, like a neon toy. The blame falls on certain compounds in their exoskeleton, in the outermost layer of their body, which absorb ultraviolet light and give it back as visible glow. People who search for scorpions in the desert use ultraviolet lamps specifically because it exposes their position like little glowing signs. Nobody fully knows what it's for. There are theories that it helps them detect light or hide. The most feared creature of the night turned out to be a light bulb dressed up as a villain. Your whole life you believed the hamburger got its name for a reason. Maybe from ham, from the word ham itself. Totally false. The hamburger is named after Hamburg, the city in Germany. From there came immigrants who brought to the United States a ground meat preparation done in the style of their city, the Hamburg-style steak. That the word happens to contain the letters of ham is pure coincidence that confused everyone for decades. It doesn't even contain ham, it never did. It's beef, not cured pork. That's why the correct name of the meat patty is hamburger, after the city. And from there came all the inventions that stuck the German city's ending onto other foods. Your hamburger is from Hamburg, not from a pig. You heard that on the moon, an astronaut weighs a lot less, and you think that means the body actually changes there, that a person truly becomes lighter. Half true. On the moon, you weigh about 1/6 of what you weigh here. That part is true, because its gravity is much weaker, but your mass, the actual amount of matter you're made of, stays exactly the same. Weight and mass are not the same thing, even though the scale confuses you. Weight is how hard gravity pulls on you, and that changes depending on the planet. Mass is how much of you there is, and you carry that with you everywhere. If you overeat, on the moon, you'll show less on the scale, but you still have the same body. You're not losing weight. The space scale is just tricking you. We all agree the cheetah is the fastest animal on the planet, the undisputed speed champion. Incomplete. The cheetah is the fastest running on land. That part is true. It reaches over 62 miles per hour over short distances. But if you count every animal, the king of speed flies, it doesn't run. The peregrine falcon, when it dives to hunt, tops 185 miles per hour, more than triple the cheetah. It's the fastest animal in the world, a feathered missile that drops from the sky with its wings pulled in. The cheetah is the best runner with legs, but the falcon humiliates it from above. The crown for speed isn't on the savannah, it's in the air. You turn on Bluetooth 1,000 times a day and you never even wonder where that strange name came from. Get ready. Bluetooth is named after a 10th century Viking king, Harald Gormson, nicknamed Bluetooth, probably because he had a dead, darkened tooth. That king unified feuding tribes from Denmark and Norway, so when engineers were looking for a name for a technology that united different devices, they chose him. And the logo, that symbol you see on your screen, is his initials in runic alphabet, the Norse letters H and B fused together. Every time you connect your headphones, you're summoning a Nordic king from more than 1,000 years ago. You named your speakers after a king with a rotten tooth. Now that's marketing that lasts forever. You were told this, like it was a law of the universe, that a sheet of paper, no matter how big, can't be folded more than 7 times. False. In 2002, a high school student named Brittany Gallivan took a roll of paper almost 4,000 feet long and folded it 12 times, not 7. She also wrote out the mathematical formula that predicts how much paper you need depending on how many folds you want. The problem was never magic, it was thickness. Each fold doubles the thickness, so you quickly reach a brick that's impossible to close. With more length, you get more folds. Think of the paper as a stack of pancakes piling itself up. It's not that it can't be done, it's that you run out of sheet. She was short on paper, not on physics. You know an octopus has eyes and you assume it sees the world only through them, just like we do. Much stranger than that, an octopus can also detect light with its skin, not just with its eyes. In its skin, it has light-sensitive proteins, the same kind normally found in eyes, spread out across its whole body. That would somehow allow it to sense the light around it, even without looking directly at it. It's one of the theories for why it's so incredibly good at camouflaging and changing color to match its surroundings, even though it's colorblind according to its eyes, as if its vision were spread across the entire surface of its skin. The octopus is an animal that, in a sense, sees with its whole body. It doesn't just look at the world, it feels it through light. You picture the famous David statue as a life-size sculpture, a marble man standing there that you could look straight in the eye. Much bigger than that. Michelangelo's David stands more than 16 feet tall, and counting the base, it goes well past that. It's a marble giant, more than 3 times the height of an average person. When people see it in person for the first time, the first thing that surprises them isn't the beauty, it's the massive size. You really have to tilt your head back to see its face. Michelangelo carved it that big on purpose, partly because it was originally meant to be placed high up on a cathedral where it would be seen from below and from far away. David is not a doll, it's a giant. Face to face is impossible. You'd barely reach its knees. Your entire inbox fills up with spam and you have no idea where that ugly word came from. Get ready for today's wildest fact. Spam was, and still is, a brand of canned meat. The word came to mean junk mail thanks to a group of English comedians. Monty Python, who in 1970 did a sketch in a restaurant where every single dish came with spam, spam, and more spam, repeated until it was unbearable, drowning out any other conversation. That idea of something annoying that repeats and won't let you hear anything else stuck around. And when unwanted mass emails showed up, someone gave them the same name. A can of lunch meat and an old joke defined the internet. Junk mail is named after canned lunch. Hold on a second, let me give you a preview. In myth number 13, I already blew your mind with speed, but wait for myth number 40 when I show you there's more of something in your backyard than in an entire galaxy. Don't go anywhere. You have it in your head that programming is a modern invention, something for guys with computers during the tech boom years. The opposite. The first program in history was written by a woman in 1843, almost 100 years before an electronic computer even existed. Her name was Ada Lovelace. She was the daughter of the poet Lord Byron, and she worked with Charles Babbage, who had designed a giant calculating machine that was never fully built. Ada didn't just translate a text about that machine. She added notes where she wrote what's considered the first algorithm meant to be run by a machine. She saw before anyone else that these devices could do a lot more than add up numbers. Computing began with a 19th century woman, long dress and all. You see a jellyfish floating and you think that inside all that gelatin, there must be some kind of complete animal with hidden organs. Get ready. The jellyfish has no brain, no heart, and no blood. It's one of the simplest and oldest creatures on the planet, made of more than 90% water. Instead of a brain, it has a network of nerves spread across its entire body, which tells it when to move and when to hunt without any central command. It doesn't need a heart because it doesn't have a classic circulatory system. Water flows in and out directly. It's an animal that hunts, moves, and survives while basically being water with nerves. It's existed for more than 500 million years without any of the things we think are essential. Pure jelly that's been winning this fight since before the dinosaurs. When you think about who invented the car, Henry Ford's face pops into your head with his assembly line and his black cars rolling off in series. Big historical mix-up. Ford didn't invent the car, he popularized it, which is different. The first modern automobile with a combustion engine was built by a German man, Carl Benz, back in 1886, and he even patented it properly. His wife, Bertha Benz, was the one who took the first long road trip in history behind the wheel to prove to the world that the machine actually worked. What Ford did, quite a few years later, was invent the way to manufacture them fast and cheap so any family could afford one, not invent the car itself. One created the vehicle, the other created the way to fill the planet with them. Benz built the engine, Ford built the assembly line. The first car in history spoke German, not English. You see one stuck to a rock and you think it's a calm little animal with a tiny head processing the ocean world. The opposite of what you'd guess. The starfish has no brain. Zero. It also has no blood and it isn't even a fish, even though we call it a starfish. Instead of a brain, it has a ring of nerves that circles its center and coordinates its 5 arms like a committee with no boss. It moves using hundreds of tiny hydraulic feet powered by seawater pumped under pressure, not ordinary muscles. And if it loses an arm, many species regenerate it without any trouble. A creature that hunts, eats, walks, and reproduces without a single central neuron. Next time you feel like you're not thinking straight, remember, there's a starfish out there doing just fine without a brain at all. You read that a company is worth $1 billion, and you translate it straight across as if it means the same thing in both languages. Very expensive mistake. A billón in Spanish is not the same as a billion in English, and the difference is enormous. In Spanish, a billón is 1,000,000 millions, a 1 followed by 12 zeros. In English, a billion is only 1,000 millions, a 1 with 9 zeros. So the Spanish billón is 1,000 times bigger than the English billion. When you hear that someone has so many billions, and you translate that straight into billones in Spanish, you're multiplying their fortune by 1,000 without meaning to. It's the most expensive translation trap on the planet. Same name, completely different sizes. Watch out for those zeros that get lost between languages. You think a dolphin sleeps like you do, closes its little eyes, relaxes completely, and rests until morning. Impossible for it. Dolphins sleep with only half of their brain at a time, while the other half stays wide awake and on watch. The reason is life or death. They breathe air, not water, so they need to come up to the surface every so often to get oxygen. If they fell completely asleep, they'd stop swimming. They'd stop coming up to breathe, and that would be the end of them. That's why they shut down one hemisphere, give that half a rest, and keep running the body with the other half, moving and monitoring their surroundings, even with one eye open. Then they switch sides and rest the other half. It's like sleeping while always keeping one guard posted. The dolphin never fully powers down. There's always someone on duty inside taking care of business. You think the QR code is a brand new invention? Born straight out of the smartphone era, apps and restaurant menus. Older than you think. The QR code was invented in 1994 in Japan, and it wasn't for paying for coffee. It was created by a company called Denso Wave, tied to Toyota, to track parts along car production lines. The regular barcode wasn't cutting it anymore. It held very little information, and it also had to be scanned perfectly straight. The QR code could hold way more data and be read from any angle, extremely fast. Ideal for a factory running at full speed. It took many years before phones made it popular for everything else. That little square you scanned to see a menu was born counting screws and spare parts in a Japanese auto plant. You assume the tiger's stripes are only in its fur, and that if you shaved one, it would end up a plain orange cat. Dermatological surprise. The tiger's stripes aren't only in its fur. They're also in its skin. If you shaved a tiger's fur off, you'd still see the stripe pattern drawn directly onto the skin underneath. It's as if the design were printed in 2 layers at once. Every tiger also has a unique stripe pattern, different from any other, something similar to our fingerprints, which can be used to identify them. It's not simply a matter of painted fur, it's a pattern that goes all the way down. The tiger is marked inside and out from birth. Its stripes aren't a shirt it can take off, they're a birthmark tattoo. As a kid, you were taught about the morning star and the evening star like they were 2 different stars. One that shows up early before the sun rises, and another that appears once night has fallen. Double surprise! They're not stars, and they're not 2 things either. Both stars are exactly the same object. The planet Venus. Venus is so bright and so close to us that sometimes it shows up clearly right before sunrise and other times right after sunset, depending on where it is in its orbit. The ancient Greeks even gave it 2 separate names because they were convinced they were different bodies, one for early morning and one for evening. Only later did they realize it was the same planet playing hide and seek with the schedule. The morning star is a single actor with 2 roles, a star that isn't even a star and mistakenly duplicated on top of that. In drawings and photos, it looks like Saturn is wearing plastic hoops, rigid, smooth, like a giant toy in space. Wrong from start to finish. Saturn's rings are not solid, they're a swarm of trillions of tiny pieces, each orbiting the planet on its own. They range from grains of dust to rocks the size of a house. And almost all of it is bright water ice that reflects sunlight. If you could walk on them, you'd fall straight through because there's no floor. There's a storm of snowballs spinning around at full speed. On top of that, they're incredibly thin, only tens of feet thick across a width of thousands of miles. They look like a vinyl record, and they're actually a school of ice. It's not a hoop, it's a cosmic traffic jam. There's a story that's been repeated endlessly that when Europeans arrived in Australia and asked what that jumping animal was called, the Aboriginal people answered kangaroo, which supposedly meant "I don't understand you" in their language. Total lie. The word kangaroo comes from ganguru, a real term from an Aboriginal Australian language, and it was in fact the name of a specific species of kangaroo. There was no confusion and no funny misunderstanding involved. The "I don't understand" story is so charming that it got passed down generation after generation, as if it were true, but it has no backing at all. The Aboriginal people knew perfectly well what animal it was and what it was called. Nobody got confused, they gave it the right name from day one. A birthday balloon full of helium seems like the most harmless, abundant thing in the world. Big mistake. Helium is one of the most common elements in the universe. But here on Earth, it's extremely rare, and it's actually running out. It's so light that once it's released, it rises, and escapes into space, never to come back. There's no practical way to make more of it. It comes from underground pockets that took millions of years to build up. And it's not just for balloons. Without helium, the MRI machines in hospitals wouldn't work, since they use it to cool their giant magnets. Every balloon you let go into the sky carries away a little piece of a finite resource. That duck voice joke is costing you your next brain scan. That balloon doesn't fly away, it leaks away. Your whole life you heard that a vacuum sucks, that a vacuum cleaner sucks up dirt, and that space sucks you outward. Almost a lie. The vacuum has no hands and no desire to do anything. It doesn't suck at all. What's really happening is pressure pushing from the other side. When you open the nozzle of a vacuum cleaner, the air in your room, which is at higher pressure, rushes toward the empty area and drags the dirt along with it. The correct word is push, not suction. It's the same with a straw. You're not sucking the soda up, you're removing air from the top, and the outside pressure pushes the liquid upward. The difference sounds like a nerdy detail, but it changes how you understand half the planet. Nothing sucks you in, everything pushes you. The vacuum is a passive guy. The air next door is the one doing the work. If I ask you which country has the most time zones, you think of Russia, so huge and stretched out from side to side. Close, but no. Ooh, the country with the most time zones in the world is France. With 12, the trick is that France isn't just the European map, you know. It has territories scattered across every ocean on the planet. Islands and regions in the Caribbean, the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, and even near Antarctica. Add up all those scattered pieces and France touches 12 different time zones, more than giant Russia, which reaches 11. It's like a country that left a suitcase in every airport in the world. The territory that seems small runs the global clock. 12 different sunrises happen in France at the very same moment. You have the idea that a rocket takes off because it pushes against the air below it, as if the air were the ground it needs to launch itself. False. Rockets don't push against the air. In fact, they work just as well, or even better, in the vacuum of space, where there's nothing to push against. What a rocket does is throw gases backward at a brutal speed, and thanks to the famous law of action and reaction, those gases push it forward. It's the same principle as if you were standing on a skateboard and threw a heavy ball backward. You'd shoot forward. You don't need ground or air. You need something to expel. That's why rockets work perfectly in space, where there's nothing at all. The rocket pushes itself by throwing things out, not by pressing against the air below. It propels itself against its own cargo, not against the planet. When you cut a hot pepper, everyone yells at you to remove the seeds, that's where the heat is. Badly explained. The seeds barely have any heat at all. The compound that burns your mouth is called capsaicin, and it's concentrated mostly in the placenta, that whitish membrane that holds the seeds inside. The pepper's veins. The seeds pick up some heat, only because they're sitting right there, like someone who gets covered in paint just from standing next to the painter. If you want to tone down a dish, what you actually need to carefully remove are those white ribs, not waste time fishing out seeds. That's why people who know what they're doing clean out the veins and leave the rest. The fire isn't in the seed, it's in the scaffolding that holds it up. Everyone repeats like parrots that Everest is the tallest mountain in the world. No argument, no asterisk. Half true, and it depends on how you measure it. Everest is the mountain whose summit sits highest above sea level. That part is completely true, and that's why climbers chase it. But if you measure a mountain from its own base to its peak, a totally different one wins. Mauna Kea, a volcano in Hawaii, has most of its body hidden underwater, sunk into the ocean floor. Counting from its underwater base to its summit, it measures more than 32,000 feet, quite a bit more than Everest's roughly 29,000 feet above sea level. What happens is that it starts way down low, with a head start. Everest wins by sea level. Mauna Kea wins by the full tape measure. It all depends on where you put the zero. You sign up for 100 megabit internet and you think you're going to download files at 100 megabytes per second. Classic trap. The megabits your internet company sells you are megabits per second, and files are measured in megabytes. And they're not the same thing, because a byte has 8 bits. So to know what you're actually downloading, you have to divide by 8. 100 megabits per second is only about 12.5 megabytes per second, 8 times less than what your head was expecting. That's why sometimes your connection feels slow, when it's actually running exactly what you paid for, just in a different unit. Small bit, big byte, and the difference is 8 to 1. They're not scamming you, they're just mixing up units to make it sound bigger. You see a blue flame and a bright orange flame side by side, and your instinct tells you the orange one, bigger and more colorful, must burn hotter. the opposite. The blue flame is hotter than the orange or yellow one. The color of a flame is actually telling you its temperature. Blue, like the one from a well-tuned stove burner, indicates a more complete, hotter combustion, which can easily top 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. Orange or yellow, like a candle or a campfire, runs at a lower temperature, with soot particles glowing as they heat up. That's why blowtorches aim for a blue flame when doing tough jobs. Next time you light your stove, check the color. The bluer it is, the hotter it burns. The cold-looking fire is the one that should scare you most because it looks pretty. The dangerous one comes disguised as calm. In school, it got drilled into you. Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, period. End of story. Half true. Bell was the one who patented the telephone in 1876 and the one who became a millionaire. But years earlier, an Italian immigrant named Antonio Meucci had already built a device to transmit voice through a wire in his own home. Meucci was poor. He didn't have the money to renew the paperwork protecting his invention, and he got left out of the big history books. Only in 2002 did the United States Congress pass a resolution recognizing his contribution to the development of the telephone. More than 100 years too late. History is written by whoever can afford the patent. What Meucci lacked was a lawyer, not ingenuity. You toss almonds into the bag of mixed nuts like it's just another nut, a close cousin of the walnut or the peanut. Botanically, not at all. The almond is not a true nut. It's the seed hidden inside the pit of a fruit, just like what happens with a peach or an apricot. In fact, almond trees and peach trees are extremely close relatives, almost siblings. When you eat an almond, you're eating what would be the tiny hidden pot deep inside a peach pit, that bitter seed nobody looks at. Many of the things we happily call nuts are actually seeds or pits from fruits, not real tree nuts at all. The true nut is a different, more exclusive and narrower category. So your roasted almond at the appetizer table is technically the secret heart of a fruit disguised as a nut. You're eating a pit and calling it a nut. You picture stars as uncountable, infinite, and trees, on the other hand, as something modest, limited, something you could count with patience. This one's going to be hard to believe. There are around 3 trillion trees on Earth, a 3 followed by 12 zeros, according to a massive scientific study that set out to seriously estimate them. The Milky Way, our galaxy, the one that contains our sun and everything we see at night, has somewhere between 100 billion and about 400 billion stars. So crunching the numbers, there are more trees on our planet than stars in our entire galaxy. Any random forest hides more trunks than that slice of the universe we call home has points of light. What's truly enormous isn't always up there. Sometimes it's growing right in your backyard. Next time you look up at the sky, remember there's even more life below you, counted in the millions. For you, the internet started when Google showed up, the search engine that swallowed the world. False? Google didn't arrive until 1998, when the internet had already been around for years. The first search engine in history was called Archie, and it was born in 1990, created by a student named Alan Emtich. After that came quite a few others with names that sound like fossils today, like AltaVista, Lycos, Yahoo, and Excite, all fighting to organize the chaos before the colorful giant ran them all over. Google won because the way it ranked pages was better, not because it got there first. Think of it like the ice cream shop that became famous. It wasn't the first one to open. It was the one that made the best ice cream. It showed up late to the party and ended up keeping the whole thing. You use the word disaster for any kind of mess, and you'd never suspect there's astronomy hiding inside it. Check this out. Disaster comes from Latin by way of Italian, and it literally means bad star or without a favorable star. In ancient times, people believed that stars and planets shaped a person's destiny. So when something went terribly wrong, they said it was the fault of a crooked star. A disaster. The same idea lives inside the word influence, which comes from a supposed fluid believed to flow down from the stars. Every time you say your day was a disaster, without knowing it, you're blaming the sky. The ruined dinner, the meeting that turned into chaos, all of it carries the signature of a badly behaved star. Your worst day carries the name of an ancient horoscope. You look at a Gothic cathedral and call any ugly, monstrous statue hanging off the wall a gargoyle. Misused. Technically, a gargoyle is only the figure that serves to drain rainwater, throwing it away from the wall through its mouth like a spitting pipe. The word itself comes from the idea of gargling, from water running down a throat. All those other carved creatures that are purely decorative with no pipe running through them aren't real gargoyles. They're called grotesques, so that decorative monster you pointed at probably doesn't meet the basic requirement. If it doesn't spit water, it's not a gargoyle, it's a grotesque making an ugly face. The gargoyle works as a gutter. The rest just scares people. You buy eggs with a deep orange yolk, convinced they're more nutritious, more farm fresh, healthier than the pale yellow ones. Almost a lie. The color of the yolk doesn't tell you how nutritious the egg is. It tells you what the hen ate. A more orange yolk shows up when the hen eats food rich in certain natural pigments, found for example in corn, flowers, or certain vegetables. A paler yellow yolk comes from a diet with other grains. But in terms of protein and nutritional value, the difference is minimal, almost the same egg. In fact, many producers add pigments to the hen's feed specifically, so the yolk comes out more orange and looks more appealing on the shelf. The color is chicken marketing, not a health certificate. They sell you orange because you like looking at it, not because it feeds you more. You assume that a river as famous and busy as the Amazon must be crossed by dozens of bridges, like any big city river. Nope, the main course of the Amazon River, along its thousands of miles through the jungle, doesn't have a single bridge crossing it. Not one. And it's not for lack of technology. It's because there are barely any cities along its banks. The river is as wide as a sea. It changes shape with the seasons and floods everything around it, so building one would be incredibly expensive and nearly pointless. People cross by boat, by raft, by canoe, the way it's been done for centuries. The most powerful river in the world gets by without a single bridge on it. An entire continent crosses it, floating, not driving. You call anyone who breaks things for fun a vandal, and you never imagined you were naming an entire civilization that actually existed. Pure history. The Vandals were a real Germanic people who, in the year 455, entered Rome and sacked it hard, with no mercy at all for its buildings and monuments. Their reputation as destroyers stayed so burned into memory that, many centuries later, near the end of the 18th century, the word vandalism started being used to describe senseless destruction of valuable things. So every time someone scratches a wall or breaks a train seat and you call them a vandal, you're giving them the name of an entire people who really walked the earth. It's not a generic insult that came from nowhere. It's an ancient nationality turned into a crime. The Vandals were people with a real history, not just a category for troublemakers. There's a story going around everywhere that the bitten apple in the Apple logo is a tribute to Alan Turing, the computing genius with the tragic life. It's a beautiful story, but it's false. The logo's designer, Rob Janoff, said himself that the bite has nothing to do with Turing. The apple has that bite for a practical reason, so it wouldn't be confused with a cherry or a tomato, and so it would have a recognizable scale. Without the bite, it was just a plain circle. The legend about the Turing tribute is so charming that it's stuck on its own and nobody lets it go. Sometimes a bite is just a bite. They added the bite for design reasons, not as a tribute. You think every planet was discovered by looking at the sky through a telescope, pointing and finding. With Neptune, it happened backward. Neptune was found first with pencil and paper, with pure math, before anyone ever saw it. In the mid-19th century, astronomers noticed that Uranus moved strangely in its orbit, as if something invisible were tugging on it with its gravity. A mathematician, calculating by hand, predicted where that mysterious object had to be to explain the pull. They sent the coordinates to an observatory, and that very same night, they pointed the telescope right there and found Neptune almost exactly where the numbers said it would be. Math saw the planet before the human eye did. Neptune showed up first on a page of calculations and only afterward in the sky. They caught it with equations, not luck. Hold on. Here's the last preview, and this one's a big deal. In myth number 59, I'm going to show you that lightning, the kind you see falling from the sky, actually travels exactly the opposite direction from what you think. Don't go anywhere. The ending gets good. You sing do, re, mi, fa, sol as if those names always existed, dropped from the sky along with music itself. Beautiful story. The names of the notes were invented by an Italian monk back in the 11th century, Guido d'Arezzo, to teach church choirs how to sing. He pulled them from the first syllables of each line of a religious hymn in Latin, where every phrase started exactly one note higher than the one before. Ut, re, mi, fa, sol, la. The opening ut was later changed to do because it was easier to sing, and C was added quite a bit later. So every time a kid repeats the scale at school, they're singing pieces of a 1,000-year-old medieval hymn. The notes didn't fall from the sky. A monk stole them from a church song so he wouldn't get lost teaching sheet music. You buy light olive oil, convinced it has fewer calories and that it's going to help you drop some weight. Label lie. Light olive oil doesn't have fewer calories than regular oil. It has exactly the same amount. All oils have practically the same number of calories per spoonful, because they're almost pure fat. And that doesn't change. What the word light means on that oil is that it's lighter in flavor and color, more refined, smoother for cooking, not lighter on your waistline. It's a marketing trick that plays on the word light, which we automatically connect to dieting. They're telling you it's light in taste and your brain hears low in calories, when really they're talking about the flavor. Light oil lightens your palate, not your scale. It's just as fattening, just with less personality. You call someone a bit crazy, a lunatic, and it sounds like a word that was just made up out of nowhere with no logic behind it. But no, it has roots. Lunatic comes directly from moon. For many centuries, people firmly believed that the moon, with its changing phases, had the power to alter people's minds, to trigger fits of madness that came and went following the lunar cycle. That's why someone with strange, changeable, or unpredictable behavior was called lunatic, meaning touched by the moon. The belief that a full moon makes people crazy has been well debunked by science. There's no proven connection between lunar phases and how people behave, but the word stuck, dragging that old superstition along inside it like a suitcase nobody ever put down. A lunatic isn't actually lunar, it just carries around an old astronomical myth hanging from its name. Every time a website asks you to accept cookies, something inside you feels like you're letting a dangerous bug into your computer. Relax. That's false. Cookies are not viruses or programs that run on their own. They are simple text files, tiny ones that a website saves in your browser to remember things about you. For example, that you're already logged in, what was in your shopping cart, or what language you prefer to see the page in. They can't run on their own. They can't damage anything. They can't steal from you by themselves. They're like a little note a store leaves so it recognizes you the next time you walk through the door. Now, it is true that they're used to track you around the internet and show you ads. And that's where the privacy debate comes in. But as far as infection goes, they have absolutely nothing to do with it. A cookie is a little note with your name on it, not a hooded thief waiting at the door. You repeat that, a butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil can cause a tornado in Texas, and you say it like it's poetic magic. Misunderstood. The butterfly effect doesn't say the butterfly causes the tornado. What meteorologist Edward Lorenz discovered was that certain systems, like the weather, are so sensitive to starting conditions that a tiny change can lead to a completely different outcome, which is why they become impossible to predict long term. It's not a direct cause and effect relationship between the bug and the storm. It's an idea about unpredictability and chaos. The butterfly is a metaphor for the fact that we can't measure everything with enough precision. Nobody's blaming the insect. The butterfly effect is about humility in the face of chaos, not about bugs with weather superpowers. If I ask you which country first gave women the right to vote, you probably think of some big, powerful country in Europe or straight up the United States. You're way off. The first self-governing country to give women the right to vote was New Zealand in 1893, way before all those powers that think of themselves as the cradle of everything modern. A small, faraway country on the other side of the world beat them by decades. Only much later did huge, supposedly more advanced countries start joining in gradually, some well into the 20th century. The cutting edge isn't always where you go looking for it. Sometimes the one who breaks the mold first is exactly the one nobody had on their radar. New Zealand voted for equality, while the big powers were still looking the other way. Tiny on the map, giant in history. You know, light is the fastest thing in the universe, and you assume that, in a fiber optic cable, it travels at that maximum speed, the famous 186,000 miles per second. Incomplete. That record-breaking speed of light is in a vacuum. When light passes through a material, like the glass in fiber optic cable, it slows down quite a bit. Inside the fiber, light travels at around 2/3 of its maximum speed, about 124,000 miles per second. Still ridiculously fast. Obviously, but not the theoretical top speed. It's like a runner who flies down an open track, but has to slow down when crossing a pool full of people. Your internet does travel at the speed of light, sure, but a version of light working slowed down inside the glass. Extremely fast, just with the parking brake slightly on. You speak Spanish all day, sure that your words are proudly Latin, proudly local. Language. Surprise, a ton of words you use without thinking come straight from Arabic, inherited from the centuries when much of Spain was under Arab rule. Alcohol is Arabic. Algebra is Arabic. Pillow, oil, sugar, mayor, syrup, chess, all Arabic. Notice the detail. A lot of them start with al, which was the article, the equivalent of our thee, and it stayed glued to the word forever. Even the expression God willing comes from Arabic, from a phrase that called on God directly. So every time you say you hope your sugar lasts, you're speaking half in Arabic without even realizing it. Your Spanish carries passports from several places. Half your kitchen cabinet speaks ancient Arabic. You were sold on ABS as a magic brake that always makes the car stop faster in any situation. Half true. ABS, the system that keeps your wheels from locking up, wasn't designed to make you stop in fewer feet. It was designed to let you keep steering the wheel while braking hard. If the wheels lock up, the car slides straight ahead like a sled and you can't dodge anything. ABS releases and grabs the wheels many times per second, so the steering keeps responding. On some surfaces like loose gravel or snow, a locked wheel can actually stop in a shorter distance, but you lose all control. ABS gives you steering, not necessarily a shorter stopping distance. It doesn't stop you sooner, it lets you choose where you're going. You look up at the sky, find north, and there it is. Fixed, eternal. The North Star marching the way since the beginning of time. Incomplete. The North Star wasn't always the Northern Star, and it won't be forever. The Earth wobbles like a spinning top that's losing momentum. A slow motion called precession that takes about 26,000 years to complete a full circle. That's why the axis points at different stars over the course of thousands of years. The Egyptians who built the pyramids used a different reference star. And in about 12,000 years, north will fall on Vega. The sky's compass has an expiration date. Your starry north is a temporary contract, not an eternal promise. You see lightning fall from the sky to the ground, and you'd swear it goes down from the cloud to the earth. Top to bottom, no question about it. The opposite of what it looks like. The bright flash you see, the burst that lights everything up, actually travels up from the ground toward the cloud. It happens incredibly fast. First, an invisible weak charge comes down from the cloud, feeling out the path, testing the air. When that guide touches or nearly touches the ground, a much more powerful and luminous return charge shoots upward, from the ground to the cloud, and that's the one you see glowing. It all happens in a fraction of a second, so small your eye can't tell the order. That's why you think it comes down, but the flash that blinds you is actually traveling up. The lightning bolt you watch fall is in reality taking off. It rises disguised as a fall. You were always told fish don't feel anything, that they're cold machines with no capacity to suffer, and that kept your conscience nice and clear. Science says otherwise. There's more and more evidence that fish do feel pain. They have special pain receptors spread across their bodies, and when something hurts them, they don't just react suddenly. They also change their behavior afterward. They become skittish, they eat less, they get stressed. In experiments, when the Ifaka were given painkillers, those behaviors calmed down, which strongly suggests they were really feeling something unpleasant. They're not indifferent machines swimming through empty space. The idea that a fish feels nothing is older than it is proven. Under those scales, there's a nervous system registering the damage. The fish isn't made of stone. It just can't scream. It's a classic in houses with several women, that if they live together long enough, their periods end up sinking due to some hormonal mystery. Lie, or at least it's never been proven. The idea came from a 1971 study done in a college dormitory, but when other scientists tried to repeat it with more data and better methods, the sinking fell apart on its own. What looks like a coincidence is pure math. Cycles run different lengths. They shift, they overlap, and every once in a while they land close together by chance. And our brain, which loves finding patterns, declares that they synced up, but there's no proven chemical signal that puts everyone on the same rhythm. It's chance dressed up as magic. The calendar isn't coordinating, it's just crossing paths by accident. You think being far from the ocean is just a matter of standing in the middle of some random country. And that's it. There's an actual record for this. The point of dry land farthest from any ocean on the planet is in the middle of Asia, in a remote region of northwestern China, near the steppes and deserts of the continent's interior. That spot is more than 1,550 miles from the nearest sea in any direction you go. Imagine driving 1,550 miles in any direction without ever reaching a coastline. It's the most landlocked corner of the world, the hardest place for a single drop of the sea to ever reach. Out there, the ocean is a distant legend. If you're looking for the most continental spot on Earth, head for the heart of Asia. It's the most landlocked point that exists, ironically enough. You were sold the idea that human smell is a disaster next to a dog's, that we can barely smell 4 things. Unfair. That classic number they sold you, 10,000 smells, was never seriously proven, and the idea that the human nose is a failure is a 19th century belief that science has already taken apart. One famous study tried to put an exact number on it and threw out enormous figures, although other researchers later challenged it as weak. What has held up is that we smell way better than we were led to believe. We're not competing with a bloodhound tracking through mud, that's true, but for a lot of common smells we do surprisingly well, and for some scent trails we actually win. The issue is that we rely so heavily on sight that we let our sense of smell go dormant. With training, people improve a lot at recognizing scents. Your nose is an underrated machine that files away thousands of memories by smell. You're not smell blind, you're just a lazy sniffer. There's a story going around that February only has 28 days because Emperor Augustus, out of envy, stole a day to make his own month, August, bigger so it would match Julius Caesar's month. Made up lie. That story is a late invention that got repeated so much it started sounding true. In reality, February was already the short month on the Roman calendar long before Augustus ever existed, for religious reasons and because of how they organized their year, which used to start in March. The short month had been set that way since much earlier times. Augustus wasn't out there cutting days from anyone out of vanity. The envious emperor version is entertaining, but it's pure historical gossip with nothing behind it. February was born short, not trimmed down by an imperial whim. Nobody stole anything from it. It was always the runt of the calendar. In English, they call a bad dream a nightmare, and a lot of people believe that mare refers to a female horse, as if dreaming badly had something to do with horses at night. False! The mare in Nightmare isn't a horse. It's an old English word that named a demon or spirit that, according to belief, would sit on your chest while you slept and crush you, causing that horrible feeling of not being able to breathe or move. That nighttime weight you felt was the mythical creature, not a farm animal. Over the centuries, the word stuck to bad dreams in general. The resemblance to the horse is purely a coincidence in sound. A nightmare doesn't gallop, it sits on top of you like an evil little spirit. You say Vikings like it's the name of a people or a race of big blonde folks from the north. Not exactly. The word Viking didn't name a people, it named an activity. Those men from Northern Europe were Norse, Scandinavian, and they were only called Vikings when they went out on raiding or trading expeditions by sea. Going out on the water was more or less called going Viking, so the same guy would be a farmer at home for most of the year, and would only turn into a Viking once he got on a ship looking for adventure. Not every Norseman went Viking. Plenty stayed home quietly farming the land. Being a Viking was seasonal work, not a nationality. Viking was something you did, not something you were born as. On a night out in the countryside, far from the city, you look up and swear you're seeing millions of stars packed into the sky? False, and by a lot. With the naked eye, even under the cleanest, darkest sky on the planet, a human eye can see at most a few thousand stars total spread across both hemispheres. And at any given moment, looking in just one direction, barely a couple thousand. The feeling of infinity comes from the fact that they're scattered, twinkling, packed close together, and our brain exaggerates it. The millions and millions of stars are absolutely out there, but they only show up once you add a telescope to the mix. What you see with the bare eye is a laughably small handful compared to what's really there. A starry sky is deeply impressive, but it's much poorer than your amazement is shouting at you. Few, but well placed. Lately, you've been sold a beautiful story that trees in a forest chat with each other, send out alarms, and feed one another like one big family through an underground network of fungi nicknamed the Wood Wide Web. Half true, and be very careful with this one. It's true, and it's key that roots team up with fungi. The fungus gives the tree minerals, and the tree gives the fungus sugar, a real proven exchange. But the romantic part, the one about the forest warning and sharing on purpose to protect the weaker trees, is now in serious doubt. A major scientific review from 2023 concluded that the evidence for that kind of communication between trees is much shakier than people believe, and that the idea got repeated so often it drifted away from the actual data. Down below, there are real deals happening between fungi and roots for sure, but the chatty forest is still more story than proof. You throw a glass bottle into the recycling bin, thinking it can be used a couple more times before it wears out. Like happens with other materials. Good news. Glass can be recycled an infinite number of times without losing any quality. It can be melted down and remolded again and again forever, and the new glass comes out exactly as good as the original, without degrading in the process, unlike plastic or paper, which lose a bit of their properties every time they're recycled and eventually become useless. Glass is a cycle with no end. A bottle can be reborn as a jar. A glass, another bottle, endlessly. On top of that, it's basically made from sand, one of the most abundant materials there is. It's one of the noblest materials we have. That bottle you recycle can live 1,000 lives and always come back like new. You assume time is perfect, that a minute has exactly 60 seconds, and that never changes no matter what. Not even time is safe from this. Every so often, some years get an extra second added, called a leap second. The thing is, the Earth's rotation isn't perfectly steady. It slows down bit by bit and unevenly for different reasons. Our atomic clocks, on the other hand, are extremely precise. So that official time doesn't drift away from the planet's actual spin. Every once in a while, the people who manage global time decide to slip in one extra second on some day, so that particular minute has 61 seconds instead of 60. That way the clock lines back up with the Earth. So there have been minutes in history that lasted one extra second and you never even noticed. Even time cheats a little, so it doesn't fall behind the planet. And with that, we're closing out a full hour of lies torn down. Leave a comment on which one was hardest for you to let go of. Drop a like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because next round there's a whole lot more coming.